Hello everyone, welcome back to this tutorial video. So now, in today's video, we'll be looking at an introduction to JavaScript. So I'm going to start a JavaScript series. So in today's video, we'll be looking at the installation of JavaScript. We'll be looking at data types and variables. So let's get started. So the first thing you need to do is to download a code editor. So in this tutorial, we'll be using Visual Studio Code. So all you need to do is come to this website, and depending on your operating system, you select the version that is suitable for you. Next thing you need to do is to install Node.js. I'm going to leave a link to these two websites in the description below. So now let's open Visual Studio Code. So when you open Visual Studio Code, there's something you need to do. You need to go to extensions and you need to install an extension called Code Runner. And I already have it installed, but once you come over here, go to the search bar, search for Code Runner. When you install it, you should have everything going. So now let's get started. So I'm going to create a new file and I'm going to save it as main.js. So once you open this, you would be able to write and run JavaScript code. Make sure you have the Code Runner extension so that you'll be able to run JavaScript in the console over here. So the first thing we're going to talk about are comments. So what are comments? So comments are essentially lines of code that JavaScript is just going to ignore. So to initialize a comment, all you need is /signs. And anytime that JavaScript sees this, it's going to ignore this line. So I'm just going to go with this is a comment. So this is just one type of comment that is utilized in JavaScript. So we have another type of comment, and it's in a different format. So you go with a /, then a star, and then a star and a /. The difference between these two types of comments is that when you use this second type of comment, JavaScript allows you to write comments on multiple lines of code. So this is a multi-line comment. So that's about it for comments. The next thing we'll look at are data types. So there are a couple of data types I will be using in JavaScript. So the first data types we'll be talking about are strings. So what is a string? A string is essentially a text. So over here you can see a line of text inside quotation marks. So the fact that the text is embedded in quotation marks, that's what makes it a string. So strings are essentially text, but note that you have to put them in quotation marks. You can either use double quotation marks, or I preferably like to use single quotation marks. It's all up to you. Next, we'll be looking at numbers, and as the name implies, these are just numbers. So I'm just going to go with age, and you can see that we have numbers over here. So you can see that numbers don't have quotation marks. If I put quotation marks around this number, it becomes a string. It's no longer a number. So next we'll be looking at Boolean. So Booleans are essentially true or false. So I'm just going to create a Boolean called true and another Boolean called false. So keep in mind that you can only have two values for Boolean, true or false. Now, the next value we'll be looking at is undefined. So what is undefined? So what undefined means essentially is that the data type has not been initialized. So you could decide to make a variable and you don't assign a value to it. So the value of this variable name at the moment is undefined because it does not have a value assigned to it. You can see that JavaScript even underlines it. So even if I don't do this, even if I just write name, the value is undefined. So the moment I assign a value to this, like 7, it's no longer undefined. It becomes a number in this scenario. So next data type we'll be looking at going to be null. So as the name implies, null is just null. So now let's talk about symbols. So symbols are data types that are unique and immutable. So what so let's dissect this in let's dissect this. So we'll start by creating a symbol. So in order to do that, we create, and then we can decide to create another variable, and then we'll equate them to we'll equate it to symbol. So if I should run console.log and I go value equals to value 2 and I run console.log, you see that console.log gives me false. But as you can see here, the symbols contain the same value. Now I'm just going to put something in it. I'm just going to put the same value in it so that you might have a clearer understanding of what I mean. So this runs with false. So symbols are unique. It doesn't matter if the name inside the parentheses are equal. So objects are just key value pairs. So I'm just going to create an object. So I'm going to come with this curly braces, and I'm just going to do this name equals to gamma, and then I can come with this 29. Remember to put a comma, and I can even decide to end this with, and I can just go with null. So always remember to add the comma. So essentially, objects are key value pairs. So these are the keys and these are the values. So now we'll be looking at variables in JavaScript. So what are variables? Variables are used as containers to store values. Programming. So I'm going to create a variable like we've done earlier. So the variable I'm going to create is name. And we create a variable by using the var keyword in front of the name of a variable. So you can give it any name as long as the name is not a special keyword. So this is name of a variable. There are some rules on making variables. It should not be a special keyword. I don't believe you can put a number in front of a variable. As you can see, as I put a number under here, you can see that the highlighting became red underneath because this will give to an error. But you can decide to put a number at the end. You can decide to put an underscore, but you can't do this because you've left a space in between. So those are the basics of variables. So in JavaScript, you should always end your line a semicolon, but you don't have to do this. Your code will still run anyway, but it's just good to do this so that JavaScript knows that you're done with that line. So when I come to the console and I run name1, when I run name1, come over here and you see that it runs Chikama. So you can see that the value of name1 is equals to Chikama. Now, we'll see a second type of variable. So this variable is called let. This is another way of saving variables. So, but there's a subtle difference between let and var. But the difference is that var is used throughout our code in the entire scope of our code, while let is only used in the block of code that is surrounding it. So if I run console.log and I run name with let, you see I still get, when I check my console, I still get my name over here. Finally, the last thing we'll be looking at is constant. So to use a constant variable, all you need to do is use the keyword const. And let's say I go with 3.41. So the thing about constant is that it's a normal variable, but the only difference is that the value of constants cannot change throughout the duration of your code. So this is what I mean. So if you take a look at this variable called name, I can always reassign the value. So I could come over here and change it to Bob. And when I go console.log, the name, Say I get Bob over here. You see I've changed the value. So let's try that with pi. Remember, pi is a constant variable, so I'm just going to try and change the value. When I go with console.log and I go with pi, I get an exception, I get an error essentially. That's been it in this video. Thank you for your time.